win. But Österreich struggled in free practice, struggled in qualifying as well. So he's to be found a long, long way back on this grid. And the other winner, in rather controversial fashion last time out, Niels Langeveld, who's been a winner of a number of championships, say at Euro Cup last year, Benelux Clio a year before that, Dutch Clio, Dutch Suzuki. So the local man on home soil ought to go well here. He starts one row back from Files, 9th on the grid therefore. But as I say, Moritz Österreich is the one that's got the biggest amount of work to do, starting a long, long way back. He will be 26th on the grid, Österreich, behind Loris Hazemans. It's a busy weekend for the fans here, and it's a busy day for the teams because they've had, after testing yesterday and then free practice, the qualifying session this morning. We lost yesterday Sebastian Steibel, who at Schijflach went off the road with his self-run Volkswagen Golf, did quite a lot of damage to that car, so that's gone by the board, that's out for the rest of the weekend. But the rest of the field, good to go then. We have got 40 cars lined up with Jaap van Lagen, hugely experienced driver, starting at the back. We had a few people in the wars with mechanical dramas in qualifying as well, stopping trackside, amongst them Tim Zimmerman. So watch his progress coming up through the field as well. Nico Kankkunen, son of rally legend Jur Kankkunen, he was another one that stopped out on track with mechanical dramas. So keep an eye to him making some progress through the pack as well once we go racing, and that will be pretty shortly now because the grid is being cleared, and as the mechanics make their way into the pit lane, 30 minutes of racing for the ADAC TCR Germany series. Last year here, certainly the second day of the weekend was beset by wet weather, and I don't think the TCR drivers got a single proper racing lap in. It started behind a safety car. When they were released, people went into the gravel, so the safety car was scrambled during that lap, and then it happened again on the next restart, and then on the next, and it was a complete washout in every sense. But here, the grid is twice the size. The level of driverability, I think, has gone up as well. It's a very, very high caliber entry as one car limps to the pit lane straight away. Is that Kai Jordan possibly? It is. Kai Jordan's Golf limps down the pit road. So if it's going to start, it will start from the pit road. And with more and more manufacturers represented on the grid these days, this is a very competitive series indeed. Talk of one for the UK for the future. But on track this weekend, you've got the likes of the Honda Civic, the Seat Leon. There is the Volkswagen Golf, the Audi RS3, and more manufacturers looking at coming into the championship. So Harry Protchik and Mike Halder share the front of this one-by-one staggered grid ahead of one-make expert Steve Kirsch with Luca Angela alongside him. Then a spin lower down for Loris Heseman seemingly. Jason Wolf and Antti Burri come next ahead of the reigning champion Josh Files, and then with him number 44 Sandro Kaibach. They are ahead of Niels Langeveld and Pascal Eberle. Then it's Dino Kalkum from 42, which is Lucas Niederdeitscher. Max Hofer and Kai Jordan are ahead of Rick Breukers and Alex Morgan. Then it is Tom Lautenschlager and Chris Richard from the European Touring Car Championship. Florian Thomer, a race winner, has Fabian Dantz alongside him. Then it is Thomas Kramwinkel and Rudolf Rinn. 22nd on the grid. 23rd is Jasmin Preissig alongside, hopefully, Loris Hesemans after his dramas. Simon Reicher comes next alongside race winner Moritz Österreich ahead of Simon Larsson and Josiah Radest. Michael Verhagen, Nico Kankkunen. Then it is Stefan Guder from Dylan Costa, Ronnie Jost and Maritz Sandberger ahead of Jürgen Schmal and Sven Market. Tim Zimmerman, a long way back, one to watch, XF4 racer. Shelvin van der Linde, whose brother Kelvin has just had second in the GT race on the penultimate row with Jose Rodriguez, and then Jaap van Lagen at the very back. How did Hesemans rotate? Question one. Oh, that was a bit undercooked, wasn't it? Completely self-induced. So Loris Hesemans, who has recently been brought into the McLaren GT fold, came out of the Audi Sport TT Cup, getting it wrong as he accelerates away from the line on this installation lap. So the field turning out of the Masters curve, and these 2-litre turbo touring cars then part of this TCR pyramid. There's an international championship, but so many domestic series now, and it is a championship, a category, a regulation going from strength to strength. 6 races, 3 different winners, and the only multiple, sorry, 4 different winners, the only multiple winner being Josh Files. Now there is Kai Jordan in the pit lane and looking as though that might be it, as the car left the grid. I wonder whether a drive shaft snapped or something like that, because the car trickled away straight down the pit lane and it's up on its stilts. I can't believe that Jordan's starting from the pits deliberately to keep out of trouble at what might be a rather, how can I put this, a frantic first corner. It does look as though it's rather more substantial than that, but we'll see what the team does. Kai Jordan with a 15th place as his best finish this year. So Harry Prochik and Mike Halder then for the front row. The second row of the grid is going to line up with Steve Kirsch and Luca Engschler. And there's another one bailing for the pit lane now. And that, peering down to the grid, is that Pascal Ebele possibly? Let's see where the gap is on the grid in a moment. It is Dino Calcum, in fact, another former Clio racer who comes down the pit lane. So Kai Jordan in. And now Dino Calcum in 36 shown as having come down the pit road. Calcum should have slotted into place behind Niels Langeveld. It is indeed 36 Dino Calcum that has come in. So high drama. The team goes to work. Can they get him back out? Dino Calcum then stranded in the pit road for the moment. The back of the grid slotting into place. Calcum, who's a triple Renault Clio champion and with a problem. So hopefully he can get into the race. Otherwise, that's going to be another significant name missing from this entry as we get set then for 30 minutes. Flag comes out against the time rather than against a set number of laps. The incident vehicle will slot into place at the very back, ready to follow everybody around on the opening lap. We'll wait and see whether Jordan and Calcum do join in from the pit lane as we get set to go racing then. Looks as though we've got two more missing. I don't see Van der Linde and I don't see Van Lagen at the back of the grid, but we'll have a look and see as they are about to go racing then. As the lights go out, it is blast off. Good start by Josh Files, who goes up against the pit wall. There's contact in the mid-pack then. There's a whole pinball effect. Three get together, cars in the wall, cars with broken suspension at the front of the grid. Mike Halder heads the survivors. There's contact as Prochik gets knocked sideways as well. And they scrabble their way out of the Tarzan hairpin for the first time with up front then. Mike Halder from second on the grid. Harry Prochik is going backwards and he's about to get lent on by Josh Files, the reigning champion, the quick Brit on the outside line then as they head down towards Hugenholtz. They work their way through the left-hander and Files doesn't gain a place and instead he's about to be mugged by Luca Engschler, who comes up to have a go at him as the cars then work their way through Hunsrück for the first time. But Mike Halder then is away and gone already. Having raced in Carrera Cup Deutschland, he was 6th in this championship last year and he's after a maiden victory this season as the cars then sprint their way up towards Skyflash for the first time. Already they've got a bit broken up because of all the Dodgem cars going on at the very start. So Harry Prochik has gone back to third. It is Halder leading the way. Whoops, one in the gravel already. This is going to end in tears, I fear. It was a good save there by Sandro Kaibach, and amazingly it didn't involve anybody else. It's one of those first laps. We've got no yellow flags on the start line, no safety car deployment. So those that all drove into each other, I think, have limped out of harm's way. Mike Halder it is up front then as they come down towards the Hans Ernst curve. And having said there's no safety car, it is about to be deployed. We've not yet got a yellow flag or the safety car legend on any of the timing screens, but there is the safety car ready to scoop them all up. And the drivers have got the message, even though I promise you every bit of information only now flits to say safety car on track. And there is the reason, because we lost Yasmin Breisig and also in strife, by the look of it, with quite a lot of frontal damage, number 39, Florian Thomas. So one of the winners this year with bad damage. Did we ever get Calcum into the race? No. Did we get Kai Jordan into the race? No. They are both still stranded in the pit lane. And the leaders, the survivors, then come over the line. Now let's try and piece it all together. Lights went out, 1 and 2 got away swiftly, 1 and 2 got away slowly, and it just kicks off in the mid-pack as people go for the gap that was never there. Now, which is the Honda that got the broken suspension? Was that Moritz Österreich? Possibly, because he was sort of in that part on the grid. Let's have a look. I do have a horrible... Yeah, it was Österreich. So he got hit by Preissig, and then he got spat into Thomas' car, and Österreich, with his broken suspension, look, just crabs his way onto the circuit. He actually hit, because he was flicked into, another car, which amazingly seemed to have got away with that okay. It might have been the car of Rudolf Rennen that was hit from behind. The start is under investigation. You can file that into the no something Sherlock heading. The survivors then on the opening lap. This was the Files Prochik move coming through the Gerlach curve. Harry Prochik, after his duff start, elbows out, hanging onto the place, and making sure that the reigning champion can't find a way past him. So a grumpy Österreich watching the replays in the pit lane, and with the safety car on track, we'll see whether any action is taken. The stewards are barely finished looking at qualifying, never mind the first race. But at the end of the first lap, it was Mike Halder leading. There is Dino Calcum, who was joined in from the pits a lap late. This becomes now a test session, really, for tomorrow for him. But Dino Calcum has gone a lap down. Under investigation is 28 Pascal Eberle, which is a big disappointment for the Quick Clio racer of seasons past. So Mike Halder leading the way, Steve Kirsch second, Harry Prochik third, Josh Files fourth, Luca Engschler, who is fifth, is also the leading rookie. In sixth spot at the moment is Niels Langeveld, winner at Ossersteben last time out. Seventh is Antti Burri. In eighth place is the American driver Jason Wolf, former Pirelli World Challenge Touring Car Class champion. Ninth is Pascal Eberle, and then in 10th place it is 44 sideways Sandro Kaibach, who recovered from his dramas down at the Masters curve on the opening lap of the race. 30 minutes, or last car running, remember, and it is Eberle under investigation. Right, 40 started. Sorry, 40 should have started. We lost a few of those before the very beginning, but we've got more now missing from the race, of course. As I say, we didn't seem to ever get Van Lagen into the race, nor Van der Linde, as far as I could see from their dramas this morning. Van der Linde, I'll tell you a lie, is in the race, but there was another gap at the back of the grid, which I'll try and work out in a moment. You've got there the incident team trying to drag everybody's cars quickly off the circuit as the field comes through. And interestingly as well, there's just about width to go past, but quite often in situations like this, the safety car brings them down the pit lane. But there is debris on the road, but there is just about the width of a car to go through. The one that was slow away, look, didn't go at all from the back, was Merket's car, number 64, Sven Market, which might have been a shrewd move in hindsight, because it meant that all the accidents were going on ahead of him. So he got completely bogged down, but did eventually get away. I think he possibly might have elected to start at the back behind Van der Linde, knowing he had a problem. Potentially that was why the grid was rather jumbled. So the field, after the first drama on the grid, gets as far as the Tarzan hairpin. That was expected to be the pinch point, but they all survived that. And it was here that Josh Files committed to the inside against Harry Prochik. Prochik's start, though, bearing in mind he was on the racing line, the grippier part of the circuit, was a little bit underwhelming. And there, little nudge from Josh Files. Files then became a target for Luca Engschler, and Sandro Kaibach over at the Masters curve ran wider and wider and wider. And I thought for one horrible moment as he came across the circuit, he was going to wipe out Rick Breukers there, the Lamborghini champion, Middle East champion at the start of this season. But thankfully, Kaibach managed to hold it all together. And Kaibach didn't kibosh anybody. 39, Florian Thoma, I think, has suffered a bit of a bruising and a winding in that incident. Jasmin Preissig is out of her car, but Florian Thoma being attended to by the incident crew. And as soon as we can get the race back underway, it will, and the red flag is now shown. So I'm afraid to say that this looks like it might be taking rather longer than initially anticipated. And so a red flag show, race stop. And after all those dramas on the grid, the race is going to be suspended and will continue in due course. But we'll confirm the restart process as soon as we can. It's one of those situations, I think, where the race director realises that it's going to be a lengthy delay, and rather than give the drivers only perhaps 2 racing laps for their money in half an hour, best to stop it, restart the clock with a specified duration and try and get a proper bit of a race in rather than next to nothing at all. But it all kicked off with Moritz Österreich trying to go for a gap on one side and others going for a gap from the other side and meeting in the middle, which was the big frustration. So the start's being looked at, but Florian Thoma needs the attention of the medical crew by the look of it, who are going to make sure that he is oh so carefully extracted from the car. Everybody will now make their way round to the pit lane by the look of it, and then we will reset for the continuation after this race suspension situation. It's a great shame because TCR likely to give some very good racing around here. It's the right sort of circuit for these cars. And the field being brought round to the grid, ready for the continuation. When they are brought forward, the grid, of course, will be in the order that, or it may even be a safety car start, but it'll be the order they're in at the moment. And so this gives the organisers a chance to clear the circuit. Possibly also they might just want to have a look at the barrier, because if that was given a really big whack, then that might need some attention as well. But the first priority, of course, as ever, is driver safety and well-being. And so Florian Thomas just being attended to at the moment. It's in his first year of car racing, actually, Florian, so he did a tremendous job at Ottersleben in the second race to take the win there. And it is he who needs just to be carefully released from the car after that jarring of his neck and his back, no doubt. So the grid will start to take shape once we get the all clear from the race director, Niels Vittich, for the restart. The grid for tomorrow's race is the same as today, but with a reversal of the top 10. So if you qualify 11th, you're 11th and back for both. But the 10th placed qualifier, which is Sandro Kaibach, will be on pole position for tomorrow, with Josh Files with him at the front of the grid. 35 heading for the pits, Rudolf Rennen. He was the other one involved in that, I predicted, and it does look as though the left rear has taken some damage, so it gives him an opportunity to head to the pit lane. So Rudolf Rennen also for the pits. And the back of the grid starting to take shape. Tim Zimmerman had made some progress on the penultimate row up to 26th spot before the flags came out. There is Rennen coming down the pit lane. Another one that seems to be missing from further up the grid was 42, which is Lucas Niederscheider. His car, I don't think, ever made the start either. Van Lagen, Jordan, and also Jose Rodriguez, after his engine change, never got there either. Dino Calcum a lap down. And the team's on the radio to the drivers, and possibly also asking questions of race control, just planning ahead. But of course, nobody wanting to see a red flag. But the team's also waiting to be allowed on the grid, because at the moment it's part fairway conditions. They're all there, ready to go if given the signal, if and when given the signal. And the clock has now stopped with 23 minutes to go. 28's the one under investigation, Pascal Eberle. Franz Enschler, no mean racer himself, looks on. He's found a very happy home in TCR, having been, as a driver for a long, long time, really the mainstay of the independent part of the World Touring Car Championship, but tempted across to TCR as a team and also a builder of the Golfs by his mate Marcello Lotti. And it's been good for business, this. Good for his son as well, Luca Enschler, moving from F4 into TCR for this season. So Mike Halder is the man having led up to the stoppage. And now the teams are given the all clear that they can make their way onto the grid. So the safety car, the red flag. And now the teams will go and attend to any car that has a problem. I don't think they're going to need wet tyres, even though it's a lot more overcast and gloomy outside than it was at the start of the day when they qualified in the bright sunshine and the high temperatures early on. The track temperature is 28.3 degrees, the outside temperature down to 22 from what it was at the start of the ADAC GT race a little while ago. But the teams venturing out. Josh Files having taken the qualifying lap record here a year ago, and 6 times a winner last season. In the first year of the TCR Germany Championship that grew and grew and grew. And after this weekend, it moves to the Nürburgring, first weekend in August, then to the wonderful Sachsenring, which, if you've never been, is a joy to behold, the Sachsenring, and it finishes at Hockenheim in late September. So a grid is starting to take shape, sadly with a few cars missing from this restart. Josh Files last year, 6 race wins and 3 pole positions on his way to winning the championship, and has been continuing in a very successful vein this year. So he remains the man to beat in this championship, but also he won the TCR Middle East Championship at the start of the season, former Clio UK and Clio Euro Cup champion. So Josh, very, very good front-wheel drive touring car racer, and drivers knowing it's going to be a while, have bailed from the cars and now have a conversation about who did what to which and to whom. 23 minutes and 18 seconds on the clock when it was stopped. Whether it will continue from that time or we will have it reset for, say, a 15-minute resumption, we'll wait and see, because the circuit has a curfew and there is still quite a bit of activity to come on track at the end of the day, because you've got the Spezial Tourenwagen Trophy to come, and also qualifying for the Renault Clio Central Europe Cup. That all needs to be crammed in before the curfew at the end of the afternoon, and the officials will be keeping an eye on that as well. So Harry Prochik is on the grid. So Prochik ready for the restart. He was running third at the time of the stoppage, but I think I'm right in saying we're going back to the original grid here. The start, yes we are, the start collision is being referred to the stewards. So they'd done 2 laps, they were on the 3rd but haven't crossed the timing line because the cars involved in the accident were there. So it's going to be the original grid for the restart, by the look of it, rather than continuing as was. Ah, and there, there is confusion from the officials on the grid as to whether Halder should be on that side of the grid as the race leader, or the side he is on from the original grid. The plan is forming. Luca Engschler, I think he's in the right place from the original grid. But I confess to being puzzled as to why, if we are having a complete restart, the timing screen is still showing the 2 laps. Anyway, a plan. Oh, hello. Now I think they are going to be put into race order, aren't they? Yes. So they were lined up on the original grid. What I was predicting should have happened is now happening. They're going to be put into the race order. So Mike Halder on pole position. Steve Kirsch's car is brought through to 2nd on the grid. This won't be the work of a moment, I promise you. Go and put the kettle on. This is the man in charge. Smartphone will have the restart grid upon it from Stefan Ruhl, the chief timekeeper. And now the toing and froing continues. So for 3rd, we want Harry Prochik's car. For 4th, we want Josh Files. So he's gained from 9th, hasn't he? That was a good getaway by Josh. Luca Engschler goes back to 5th. 6th should be Niels Langeveld. He's gained from 10th. Antti Burri 7th. He's gone back 1 place. There is Josh Files, the British driver, in the Target run car. But Josh hops out, stretches his legs while the grid is formed. And in a few moments we'll clamber back on board. But We, as yet, have no indication of a restart time, but the fact that the grid is starting to be put into a semblance of some order is moderately encouraging. Josh Winner and Ottersleben, both of the Red Bull races as well, fell to Josh. He's the only, as I say, multiple winner of the season. Luca Engschler looking up the grid, but Florian Thoma, of course, one of Franz Engschler's drivers, so there's concern, yes, about getting his drivers ready for the restart, but also of one of his gang having taken a whack. I think Luca is off for a splash and dash by the look of it. Thumbs up from Franz Engschler, but let's hope that's the case. So 40 cars on the grid, and as I say, even more came, because, sorry, 40 cars qualified for the race, even more came. We lost 1 or 2 in free practice. Niels Langeveld with his very cheesy crash helmet, being very animated about the start description. It's one of the best crash helmet designs for a while, that. It's quite cleverly done. All good for the sponsor. Niels Langeveld, who for a number of seasons was clinging on to his racing with limited budget, but it's good to have him in this championship this year and driving for Racing One GmbH. Right, the ADAC officials have arrived now to try and sort out the grid. Florian Thoma out of the car, and so now that can be extricated from the circuit. But you can see why the clock was stopped, because we'd be almost at the end of the 23 minutes, I think, by now. So the problem now, of course, is that the grid is still being formed. I'm surprised, in a sense, they didn't actually just leave them in a line and restart behind the safety car in one order, because all you're doing now is taking up time that the circuit curfew may not allow, whereas they were in order anyway, because that's how they came through behind the safety car. Anyway, the decision has been taken to put them into order, and then they will continue behind the safety car, one assumes. They'll get a warming up lap in at least. So we will see. The marshals, they can see orchestrating all of this. I love the fact they're all staring at smartphones. The days of a runner to come from the timekeeper's room with multiple copies of the grid to give to the grid marshals have gone. It's all done thanks to your smartphone nowadays. So 98 gets into the queue, which is Tom Lautenschlager's car. There's number 12, the Swede Simon Larsson, another of the target drivers. Josh Files' helmet off, so he is not anticipating being needed for a few more minutes. The British driver who has done a great job in this championship and in the TCR Middle East series, but perhaps isn't getting the credit he deserves back home. But Josh taking the bold decision to come and race in European series, in mainland Europe and in the Middle East, and doing a very, very good job in both. And it's good to see him going so strongly. James Nash upholding honour in the international series for the Brits. And so Florian Thoma's car doesn't look that badly damaged, but I think it was the impact and the jarring that the driver took that has really caused the delay here. It wasn't possible for him to just leap out of the car without some very careful attention. And so now that the track is just about clear, then we will await news of the restart from the race director. You can see that the Nissan incident vehicle is about to be scrambled from the front of the grid. And we should be good to go, he says, in a few moments' time. There's Florian Thoma's car. Punctured tire, suspension damage, but cars meeting in the middle, really, as they all accelerated away from the line. And that, of course, bear in mind also from a one-by-one staggered grid, which is used by race directors as the safer option, because you've staggered the cars away from one another a little bit. In theory, less chance of a start line accident, but not today, sadly, with such a busy grid. Moritz Österreich, then a retirement. Jasmin Preissig, a retirement, and Florian Thoma, a retirement in that start line accident. There is Luca Engschler awaiting the restart, having a drink. when we get back underway, Mike Halder will be the race leader, based on what we had at 2 laps. Steve Kirsch with him. Mike Halder, who had a spell in karting before going into the Carrera Cup Germany as a Class B driver, never really developed in those cars, but in this has gone very strongly. A better way, perhaps, to learn your craft straight out of karting.
You want to talk to me? Okay.
So 6th in the championship last year. Josh Files about to do an interview for television, which may not be possible to eavesdrop because that's going to a different feed, I fear. Number 1 on the car, reigning champion. And the redoubtable Marshall is back to make sure that everybody is in the right place. Josh Files being interviewed for Sport 1, the German broadcaster. In the meantime, photographers gather on the gantry, and Fabian Thomas' car now is out of harm's way. So, do we get a 5-minute board? It should be imminent, I would have thought, now that the track is clear. And do we continue from the 23 minutes point? It's getting ever more blustery, wind direction changing all the time as well. And one of the constant hazards for teams here is that if it is a windy day, the sand gets blown onto the circuit. So it's almost like dry rain in a sense. Your grip levels are affected by this sand being blown onto the circuit randomly at different parts of the lap, on different laps as well. Right, the pit lane klaxon is going off, which suggests that we might be good for a countdown soon. But I haven't yet seen anything on the timing screen that will suggest a restart time, unfortunately. There is the grid, now formed, and drivers are ready to start work again. Josh Files, balaclava on. It would be interesting now to see how Josh would fare, not just in TCR internationally, but also in the British Touring Car Championship. I know that's a very different spec of car, but having gained a very, very good reputation in front-wheel drive touring cars, he is a man who should have a good touring car career in front of him. The restart will be behind the safety car in 10 minutes' time. So we've got another 10 minutes to wait yet before the cars are released. It will be 20 minutes when we get to the resumption. And then we will hopefully continue to the very end. So safety car to a red flag, and then continued over 20 minutes. Mike Halder will be the man that will lead them away. And of course the 20 minutes start as soon as the safety car pulls away from the line. The Bass Curtin team still concerned with its wet tyres on the trolley, but looking, it is raining. Looking out of the back of the box, the rain is coming. The rain has started. The spots of rain have come. That's just what the race director doesn't need now, isn't it? A further delay for the continuation of the race, with the teams needing to change tyres, but the umbrellas are out, and now the rain is coming, and the grid is on slick tyres. So it's a wet race. It's been declared a wet race, putting the onus on the teams to make the choice, but you can see the spots of rain on the door. Now, quite often, of course, if it's light rain and you've got warm tyres, the slicks will continue to operate on that track surface, but they will be absolutely stone cold, having been sat on the grid for what seems like a long, long time. And so the teams are going to have to make this decision now, whether they tiptoe round on slicks, and if the temperature comes up, they're going to work, or whether it's worth the gamble of starting on wet tyres, and the rain that was forecast may get worse and worse. They're being allowed to change tyres. You can hear the instruction being given. This might be a further delay, but of course, it's all very well being allowed to change, but is it the right thing to do? Looks like Engel is going to go onto wets. At the moment, I would say that the slicks might work, but if it gets heavier, then those that might make the change onto wet tyres could be in the box seat. The hesitation in my voice is coming because by declaring it a wet race, that puts the onus on the teams. The race director wouldn't necessarily suspend the race for the track conditions because they've been given the choice of going onto the wets or staying on the slicks. You can see that it is light rain at certain parts of the circuit, but it's not yet wet enough for those wet weather tyres to be required. I would not have thought. They are on Hankook tyres in this championship. There is no further news about a delayed start. You've got to be off the jacks at the 3-minute board, don't forget. So that would take you to 51 on the clock, and it's 47 local time. But cars are up on jacks. But I still don't think it's wet enough. One car with the wipers on is Luca Engschler, but it could be interesting this if the bulk go on slicks. A wet track declared, but it's not very wet looking out of the back of the box. People have got the brollies up and the hoods up, but it's certainly not heavy rain, far from it. So it's fascinating to see what the teams opt to do here. Mike Halder looks like he's pretty much committed to his slick tyres, doesn't it? And the race will resume over 20 minutes when we get going. You're not, again, a bit like last year, I'm afraid, with TCR and Zandvoort. We've been frustrated in not yet having had a racing lap. But we will, fingers crossed, be good to go shortly. The wets are there, so of course they can make the call, but they need to be quick about it within the next couple of minutes, really. Because, as I say, the restart is 54. You've got to be off the jacks at the 3-minute board, so that will be in 2 minutes' time. And it doesn't look like there's much choice to check. Oh, now Mike Halder's team have a think about it, don't they? Look at the pole. So the tyre choice critical, but unless it really starts to hammer it down, slicks would be the way. Oh, interesting. Mike Halder's team are going at least up on the jacks, preparing to change onto wets. There's no news yet that the start will be delayed further, but Mike Halder's team have the car on the jacks. There are the slicks that might well be replaced. I can hear air guns going somewhere on the grid. Might be for Engschler, who would be not far behind. Now, whose car is that? Josh Files. Could be an interesting gamble. Go on wets. But I would have thought they're going to run out of time here for doing this, because the race will restart in just over 3 minutes' time. And you need to be off the jacks at the 3-minute board. Prochik's up on the jacks. So Josh Files, am I right in saying wet's on the back but not the front? Now they sort the front of the car out. So Josh Files goes onto wet tyres. Still, yeah, the rain's getting a bit heavier, but it's still not torrential, I promise you. That's the view from inside one of the GT Mercedes sitting in Parc Fermé from the previous race. You can see that clearly the rain is falling, but it's not hammering down. And so now onto wets also goes 41, Steve Kirsch. What about the pole car? What did Halder decide to do in the end? Tyre choice is going to be the key to all of this, but for some it's a gamble. For some it might be the wrong call. And I'm still nervous about those drivers that are changing now rather than being down off the jacks. But I think most of the grid are going for it, aren't they? 64 is going on to wets. You can see at the very back. Mike Halder on slicks still. Leaving this to the very, well, I would have said past the last moment, actually, because the race is due to restart in now 2 minutes' time. Go. So the team are going for it. The pole car onto wets, Mike Halder. But the last information about the restart said at 15:54, no extra time yet has been allowed for the indecisive teams. I suppose now you get to a point where if one at the front of the grid goes wet, you've got to cover that, haven't you? So what will be interesting is to find somebody in the midfield or even at the back who's electing to stay on slick tyres and hope for the best. We are a minute and a half away from the race resumption over 20 minutes. And wet tyres the go for the front of the grid at least. So if we suddenly see somebody carving their way through the field, it might well be that they've elected to stay on the slicks and the road is still working for them, or it could be that they're the one that goes sliding off into the gravel because it's just too cold and slippery for the slick tyres. Do you gamble at this point? Not if you're thinking about points. You've got to look at what the rest of the front of the grid is doing, your championship rivals, and go for the same call. What's the weather forecast saying as well? Everyone having a look at the forecast on the grid. The race officials starting now to get ready for the continuation of the race. But there, look, Harry Prochik still up on the jacks, and we are 30 seconds away from the race getting underway. So if Prochik is not, if he's not down on the ground shortly, he's going to be in real strife. 20 seconds. There's no extra delay being offered. Now it is. Having just said that, the start is delayed. But the teams have run this to the edge, haven't they, by wanting the extra time to change tyres. Most, I think, have in the end elected so to do. So the start is delayed yet further, but until when, we know not. Surely it's not going to be another 10 minutes. I think the start is delayed because teams aren't ready for 15:54, but they've been unready because they were indecisive. So the teams have rather forced the start to be delayed themselves. Whether anybody's going to be penalised for that remains to be seen. But traditionally, if you're not down from the jacks at the 3-minute board, then that in itself is a penalty. To delay the start by being up on your jacks might, in the case of Harry Prochik, be something the stewards want a conversation about, to say the very least. So a delayed start once more. But they had 7 minutes when the rain started to make the decision. The more you look out at the back of the circuit, the wetter it seems to be, but over near the start and finish line, I would say this rain has virtually stopped now. It's not terribly heavy at all. So because it's quite windy and the wind direction keeps changing, it's hard for everybody to gauge a proper idea about this, I think. Anyway, the grid is cleared finally. And so there's no reason, I wouldn't have thought now, that the start can't get back underway. The safety car is there, ready to lead them around, and a race that should have finished 10 minutes ago has not yet started. 2 laps in the book, both of which effectively have been behind the safety car because that first racing lap was brought to a suspension towards the end, and then the second lap and the third lap, which never was completed because they stopped before the timing line, again under safety car conditions, into the red flag. But what were glorious conditions this morning have certainly changed now, given the teams and race control a real headache, that rain coming at just the wrong moment when you wanted to get the race back underway. So, how are we looking then? The start was delayed 3 minutes ago. The grid is clear. And the new start time is a minute and a half away. Hurrah, we are good, just about to go then. And we're still on for 20 minutes for the resumption of this race. And there is what's left of 40 cars that should have rocked up for the original start. So 20 minutes, and it will continue behind the safety car. And how many laps they will do behind the safety car, given the changing conditions, remains to be seen. But I still think the really smart money could be on somebody putting slicks back on. I'm not sure those wets are going to last, given the current levels of water that I can see falling. I'm not sure they're going to last 20 minutes. Look, umbrella's down now. So you've committed. The teams are off the grid. But if anybody has stayed on slicks, I still think that could be the way to go. There's a soggy doggy there who had enough of being in the rain. He wants to go for a run. So at 15:58:30, which is 1 minute away, we should get the TCR Germany race 1 underway again. And it will be Mike Halder looking for a maiden victory this season, who will lead them around. So this mix of the Hondas, the Seats, the Volkswagens and the Audis that dominate this region's TCR Championship in a moment will be released then for this continuation of the race. What have we got? 20 seconds, I think, now, and then we will be good to go. You've got Mike Halder's car then on that notional pole position. And so now the race is back underway behind the safety car. Everybody accelerates away, and so we are back underway then. So it was a safety car to a red flag, and then a safety car restart with 20 minutes on the clock. So it's going to be probably a good 16 minutes on the clock when they get back round to the end of this lap. And whether that's going to be the racing lap, we'll wait and see. So Josh Files, one of the first to commit to the wet tyres. Harry Prochik, the runner-up to him in the championship last year. Steve Kirsch was third, fourth Anti-Bury. Mike Halder, as I said earlier, sixth in last year's championship. So you've got many of the same names, the familiar drivers, staying on for another term in this championship. But still come back to this point. That does not look wet enough for wet tyres to work. And if I look out of the back of the box again, it is the odd spot of rain. I think there are a lot of teams now that may well think, got this wrong. And if you have a sudden charge of people in the pit lane at the end of this lap, it would not be a huge surprise, because the fear would be those tyres are going to overheat. There's another one that's not going much further, Stefan Guder. He was in 31st place, but has come into the pit lane. Now, has he done the right thing, and is he going back onto slicks? Just quickly, if we stay with this, just see what comes off. That's wet going on to slicks, isn't it? So Stefan Guder, if he can, well, he's going to lose a lap though, that's his problem. I was going to say, if he can get the car back out and catch the crocodile, he might well gain as everybody else comes in, but he's going to lose a lap, isn't he? Because he won't be allowed out of the pit lane, I wouldn't have thought, until the cars have gone past. So Guder might well have done the right thing, but he could lose, except the safety car comes in this time. So if they can get him out, which I'm not convinced, that could have been the move of the race by Engschler's team. So the lights are out. The safety car will peel in this time. What have we got on the clock now? Just under 18 minutes and counting. Mike Halder leads the way. So still fascinating to see who has done what for tyres. We know the majority of the front of the grid have gone on to wets, but it might not be the right thing to do. We will see. Unless the rain comes again, which is always possible. So through the Hans Ernst curve they come, and then up towards the Kumo right-hander. Mike Halder accelerates away. It's not been that quick a restart lap, but now let's see how much warmth it can get into the tyres as we go racing then. The ADAC TCR Germany race 1 here at Zandvoort gets back underway after a very, very long interruption. It is a greasy, more than wet circuit, and everybody hustles on as the green flags fly. So Mike Halder has done a very good job on the restart to get away from everybody else. Down they come towards Tarzan Hairpin through that right-hander, and then accelerating their way up towards Gerlach. And just look at the gap that Halder has pulled. It was 1.2 seconds. Steve Kirsch very slow away or very cautious away on that restart. So the field working its way down to Hugenholtz. Kirsch running at the moment in third. Prochik is fourth. Josh Files is fifth. In sixth place is still Engschler. And there, a lap down then, back into the race, goes Thomas Guder. His lap times are going to be the ones to watch now against everybody else. And there, going wide, is Prochik. Coming up the inside of him is Josh Files for third place, trying to make his move at the Masters curve. Josh Files, I think, should go through. Let's have a look in a moment as they come back into view. Has he gone by? Side by side, lower down. The man on a mission is Niels Langeveld. I reckon he stayed on slicks. Look at the way that Langeveld's going, and off the road has gone there. Josh Files in the background. Niels Langeveld, we didn't see what they were doing to him on tyres, but just look at the way that he's going. That, to me, says that he's not got onto the wet tyres that everybody else has, because they're in real strife at the moment, and Langeveld is absolutely flying. There's a real battle going on there. Look, you can see between Josh Files and Luca Engschler. So some, if they're on slicks, are making progress. Others that are on wets are struggling. But the way that Kirsch and Project were dispatched, really suggesting... And another one going quickly, look, is Alex Morgan. I reckon he stayed on the slick rubber as well. So wets for the front of the grid may not have been the right call after all. Look at the way that Langeveld there is right on the back of the leader, Mike Halder, as they come up towards the right at Kumho. Those on the wets are struggling. I'm waiting to see if anybody bails for the pit lane this time around as they come up towards the timing line. There, Steve Kirsch has got Project behind him. The top two goes through. Look at this. This is going to end in tears, isn't it? Kirsch just ahead. Jason Wolf, the American driver, is carving up through the order as well in the Engschler car. There's one for the pit lane. Look in the background. 2, 3 abreast, almost down towards Tarzan. And Jason Wolf, I think, must also have gone for slicks, or remained on slicks, because he's carving his way into the mix. Pascal Ebeler coming into the pit lane now, probably to change onto the slick rubber as well. But Niels Langeveld then led at the end of the lap. We didn't see him make the move, but we've got a new race leader in Niels Langeveld. Second is Mike Halder, and they scrabble their way now up through Hugenholtz. Alex Morgan is up to 7th, if not better. Keep your eye open for number 2, the yellow and white car, because Alex Morgan is carving his way through this next little gaggle. Right, Langeveld leads, Halder is second. In third is Jason Wolf. And off in the background, we've got 94, Chris Richard. That's going to be another safety car, isn't it, with that car in the wall. And now you can expect a whole rush of people into the pit lane if the race is neutralised. Chris Richard given a big whack. He was out with an engine failure at Otterschleben. He's in the wall here. Brakes are on fire by the look of it as well. The little flame licking around the front disc. Safety car deployed. And now, with everybody being bunched up, I would anticipate you're going to get everybody down the pit road, except for this man, Niels Langeveld, who will lead the way, and he stayed on the slick tyres, and that has been, as I was suggesting, it could be for some, the right decision. Mike Halder is going to be second. Third is Jason Wolf. He's going to gain track position as those that are on wets come in. So Langeveld and Wolf, you can say off the pace, have made the right call to stay on the slick tyres. And so, yet again, barely a racing lap done before we get the safety car out. And this, again, is partly caused by those on slicks and those on wets getting into the wrong place at the wrong time. Chris Richard may well have stayed on slick tyres, hence his pace, but he got caught up round the outside. That's a big old impact into the wall. I think he might have been on slicks, but now I'm afraid to say he's a retirement. So Chris Richard in the barrier. Big damage to the car as well. TCR and Zandvoort is fated. Oh, there's another accident happening lower down the order as well. 57, Michael Verhagen, that was, being shoveled out of the way. So, Langeveld leading the way. Now, actually, that rush of people into the pit lane I was predicting has not come. I'm very surprised. Chris Richard gets out of his car, but some of them, I think, are electing to stay on what they have chosen, knowing that there aren't many more minutes left in the race, relatively speaking, because it's 12.5 on the clock now. It'll be another lap or two before this car is retrieved. Chris Richard absolutely furious about that, but again, I think he possibly feels he'd made the right call, staying on the slick rubber and then getting involved with somebody else being fired off the road. Not his fault, but he's, as you can see, a very irate man indeed. The Swiss driver trudging away. Drives for the Target team in this series. Peter Rickley's team in the European Touring Car Championship. And just stay there, please, says the marshal. But all the adrenaline is pumping for Chris Richard. Right, into the pit lane for slicks. Who is that? We've got Stefan Kaibach, and also 25 Loris Hezemans has come in. So, sorry, Sandro Kaibach, I should have said. He's in, and so is Hezemans. So those Ausch Motorsport cars changing tyres. And as long as they can stay on the lead lap, could be in the box seat. Spots of rain on the camera lens out at the back part of the circuit. Track temperature is dropping. It looks right gloomy out there, doesn't it? But at the moment, with the flash of the lights, now who is that trying to overtake and get through the pack? Niels Langeveld heads the way. Is that Pascal Eberle who has arrived behind him? It is. Out of where? Because Eberle was not anywhere near the leading order at the start of this lap. He was 30th. So Pascal Eberle, I think, is a lap down, trying to get himself through the mix. The safety car leads them through. And the green lights come on. Now, in theory, that means you can go past, but it's got the right car behind it. It's got the leader, so it doesn't need Niels Langeveld to get past. It's Eberle in second place that's a lap behind. He's the one in the problem. But for the officials' point of view, they've got the right car behind it. So Niels Langeveld leads. Pascal Eberle, a lap down, is the frustrated driver. But we've lost somewhere, have we? No, not Jason Wolf. He has survived. Just out in the nick of time there, look, goes 44 Sandro Kaibach back into the race. He's now got to play catch-up. He was just out in time. And there, after Chris Richard's drama, the track is being swept. A lap down, Loris Hesemans, so it didn't work for him, but it might work for Kaibach to gain places if he can latch onto the tail of the cars ahead. But again, we're going to have so few racing laps. It's an enormous frustration for everybody, this. But partly the driving standards have been that we've had all these incidents, but it just seems to take a long time to sort things out, doesn't it, on occasions, with that lengthy delay to get the restart underway. And finally, when you do go racing, somebody gets put in the wall. So Niels Langeveld leads. Mike Halder was second. Safety car will be in this lap. Hopefully we can go to the end without further dramas. Jason Wolf should get second, shouldn't he, away from Halder, because he's on slicks and Halder is on wets. And the rain continues to spit and spot, but it's certainly not wet enough for wet tyres. So does anybody else roll the dice and come in? The one that's still playing catch-up, of course, now is Sandro Kaibach, who is charging along merrily behind, trying to get onto the queue of cars so that he can then work his way up the order. The order is there, Niels Langeveld leading, Mike Halder second. Ignore Pascal Eberle, who is in the grey car in second on the road. He's a lap down. So it's Halder second. Third, Jason Wolf. Fourth is in 58. Rick Breukers, he must be on slicks because Breukers has arrived out of nowhere. Fifth, Alex Morgan slick. Sixth, Josh File. Seventh is Max Hofer. In eighth place is Steve Kirsch going backwards. Ninth is Thomas Kramwinkel. And then 10th, Luca Engschler. The incident involving Chris Richard is under investigation. Right, so ones to watch, 58 Rick Breukers and 2 Alex Morgan, as well as 38 Jason Wolf. But you may not have seen the last of that safety car, I'm afraid to say. Niels Langeveld then, looking for a second win of the year, leads them away, and he could not be better, could he? Because he can charge off with Eberle out of sequence, a lap down. Halder has got no traction at all, look, so straight away past him at the safety car line goes Jason Wolf and Rick Breukers. But nobody bails. They all try and persevere to the very end here. But it's Langeveld leading. So Jason Wolf second, Rick Breukers third. They've got to catch and pass Pascal Eberle before they can think about doing anything about the race leader. And for the moment, they're so busy scrapping for second place. Langeveld's been given a get-out-of-jail-free card here. He doesn't have to worry about the opposition. They're taking care of themselves. Here we go again, more mayhem. Off the road goes Tom Lautenschlager in the Audi. Tom Lautenschlager in the wall. And are we going to get another safety car period? This is just what we had last year in the heavy rain. Release, accident, safety car. Release, accident, safety car. Barely any racing gets done. Only in sort of half a lap between interruptions. Rick Breukers then, hustling on, trying to get himself up through the pecking order. So who is second still behind Langeveld? It is Jason Wolf. Alex Morgan third, the British driver having his best showing of the season so far. And there is Lautenschlager off the road. And let's see how he got there. It was 3 wide, wasn't it? And it's a narrow circuit, Zandvoort, in fairness, but he was tipped into that by Engschler. Kirsch was involved in it as well. And safety car is deployed once again. So a race of constant interruptions. Have we had I don't think we've had a full racing lap yet, have we? With all this damage and all of these interruptions. So this time it is 98 Tom Lautenschlager in the wall. And the second safety car of the restart comes into play. Told you you've not seen the last of the safety car. 6 minutes to go. And I've not even said safety cars breed safety cars yet. We'll just take that as a given, shall we? Into the Tarzan hairpin, the field will turn again behind the safety car. And I suspect the race director may want a word with them all before tomorrow's race. It's a shame that we have a race like this, because one of the fascinations of a race with mixed weather and drivers on different tyre choice is that you get all the overtaking. But if the driving standards don't allow it, then you end up with all the drama. And again, you see, Rick Breukers is the man who's made the progress up into second place. It's amazing, isn't it, that he's come up the grid so nicely with so little racing. But by doing it on the half-lap restarts and other people crashing out of the way, Breukers, who started, what was he, 11, 13, 15, 17th on the grid, he's now up into second place. But again, he's got Pascal Ebeler in front of him. Ebeler a lap down, so Breukers would have to get past him, and I think he's on the same tyre. I think he's on slicks before he could think about Langeveld. Ebeler is the hugely frustrated driver that's never been able to unlap himself. Were he to get onto the back of the queue of cars, things might happen for him. Kaibach is 27th, but that's last on the lead lap. But now he's caught up again after his pit stop. He might be able to do things. Ebeler is ahead of Hezemans of the lapped drivers. The other one, of course, who pitted but dropped a lap was Stefan Guder. And so Langeveld, the best lap of the race was done by Sandro Kaibach, a 1:49 last time through, playing catch-up. So safety car stays out, 4 minutes to go. It's going to be a lot of work for the teams overnight with some very damaged cars. How is the championship leader getting on? Josh Files down to 7th. So Niels Langeveld, Rick Breukers, Alex Morgan, Max Hofer, Jason Wolf actually losing out despite being on the right tyre choice. He got muscled out in that restart. He's down to 5th. 6th now is Thomas Kramwinkel. And then, effectively, the best of the wet drivers now is Josh Files in 7th. 8th, Mike Helder. 9th, coming into the mix, 78, Fabian Dantz, who is a Clio Europe champion. And then 10th, Luca Engschler, the leading rookie. Right, what's left of the car of Tom Lautenschlager is retrieved. And can we go racing, well, at all? Because, as I say, we've had no full racing laps yet. Lautenschlager's car, hopefully, can be out of the way fairly swiftly. There is a vehicle access point just there, you can see, into the paddock. Can we get the race underway at the end of this lap? Where is the safety car, and how long will it take to thread a car with broken suspension through a narrow gap? Oh, it's going to be another lap, isn't it? Because they're going to want that through the access gate there. This is the other problem that the race director faces, of course. You get a car out of the way, but you then take time trying to move a battered car. The marshals do their best, but it all takes time. You've got to unhook it, you've then got to push it and marshal it into place. Then that incident vehicle will have to go back to its place. So I don't think we're going to get another racing lap in here. 2.5 minutes to go. The leaders are at Tarzan. We will be lucky to get the last lap in. All that effort from the teams, from the drivers, and you end up with a race of nothing, in a sense. Yes, a lot has happened, but not a full racing lap thus far. The rain is coming again over at Skyflach, and it's also coming a bit more heavily now at the start and finish area. So if it were to get underway properly, and it is wetter there, you can clearly see it, this might give an opportunity to the likes of Josh Files to gain some of the places back again and make life a bit tougher for those on the slick rubber. If this had been a race of natural order, without all the interruptions, it would have been an absolute perler, watching how different tyre choice was going to rise and fall. The safety car will be in this time, and it'll be one lap to the flag. So the Hardy Marshals, get ready. The next race, the localised German Spezial Tourenwagen trophy runners, must be in a complete state of flux, knowing what to do for tyres. So as the field with the lights out atop the safety car get ready for yet another restart, I've lost count, it will be one final lap. So at least that ought to be concluded with a checkered flag, even if there's a drama on it. And the circuit now probably wetter than it has ever been. So Niels Langeveldt's advantage, I fear, is going to disappear. And Josh Files in 7th might come through this as the race winner. Those on slicks are going to have to tiptoe away now. It was the right call, and had the race not been neutralised, we might be at the end of it by now, because of course the laps take longer under the safety car. But Niels Langeveldt has got to go for broke, and he's got to tiptoe his way around at the same time if both of those things are possible. He still has this buffer of Pascal Ebele behind him. Rick Breukers runs second then, and now you can see how treacherous it is. So Josh Files, the leading runner on the wets, has got Mike Halder up behind him as they go through. So this could be a very lively last lap, or it could be even more carnage. And now it is wetter than ever at the Tarzan hairpin as they work their way through. Those on slicks thinking checkered flag come soon, please. Those on wets thinking this could be the golden opportunity. And there, look, making a move is Engschler, trying to tiptoe his way around on the outside line. It is so greasy now, more than fully wet. Alex Morgan coming under attack. 38 dropping down the order is Jason Wolf, but still actually the cars on wets are not making much progress forward. They too are still trying to get to the optimum point here with the temperatures up and the grip levels seemingly still having enough for Langeveldt. So Niels Langeveldt leading the way. Whoops, more drama, heading for the wall there. Clattering off it is 82, back onto the road with suspension damage. Thomas Kramwinkel, he's going to try and limp his way round to the end. But for this lap at least, everybody perseveres. Alex Morgan up the inside of Jason Wolf. Morgan was running in 3rd, but he's dropping back a little bit now. Just wondering whether anybody has made that gamble of going for a mixture of slicks and wets that was outlawed in some championships. I haven't had a chance to dive to the regulations here to see if you can still do it in this, but as the leaders tiptoe their way around the last lap, there, Pascal Ebele still a lap down. He's got Rick Breukers behind him running 2nd. 3rd is Alex Morgan. The incident involving Kramwinkel you've just seen is going to be investigated, and down towards the Hans Ernst curve, an effort is being made up on the inside line by Max Hofer to try and gain ground. But Niels Langeveldt, look, has got this healthy advantage. A great restart. There's strife in the background, more cars cluttering into each other. But Niels Langeveldt is going to come through and score the race win in a moment. One corner to go, and the one racing lap that we get without an interruption is going to have a checkered flag at the end of it, seemingly, as up towards the timing line. Oh, and now a last lap board goes out. So Niels Langeveldt squeezes through, in fact, onto his last lap now. And is that going to be a lap too far? Well, he's still 5 seconds ahead of Rick Breukers as they work their way now through the right-hander at the Tarzan hairpin. 1 or 2 more slither out wide. 3rd, back up the order is Jason Wolf at the expense now of Alex Morgan. Josh Files there in 5th spot at the start of the lap. Ignore Ebele in 28 because he's a lap down. There is Files, bags of understeer at the Hugenholtz curve. He's got himself up past Alex Morgan. So the 2 Brits have switched order here, and now as they accelerate their way up towards the right, coming through the Slottermacher Bocht, it remains Langeveldt well clear in the lead of the race. Josh Files trying for all he is worth to gain more ground before the end. He's right on the back now of Jason Wolf, so the reigning champion, the championship leader for the podium. It's a real possibility as he goes for 3rd. He might even get 2nd out of all of this, depending on how he survives here. Pascal Ebele is the cork in the bottle. Rick Breukers trying to get past the lapped driver. Ebele not being very cooperative, and in fact, there aren't any blue flags being shown to him either. So he's not getting out of the way. He's holding up the battle behind him, and Rick Breukers then ahead of Jason Wolf, ahead of Josh Files. 2nd, 3rd and 4th have only 3 real corners to go as they come down towards the Hans Ernst curve. Breukers trying to attack, but he's going to lose out, isn't he? Wolf gets up the inside if they make contact, and they do. This will play into the hands of Josh Files, who tries to scrabble up the inside in the Honda. He can't find a way past. The track virtually blocked, look ahead of him. But Jason Wolf has got back up past Rick Breukers in all the shenanigans, except he goes a little bit wide, and Breukers, the Dutchman, comes back up the inside of him with a corner to go. Here comes Files. It's going to be a win for Niels Langeveldt. A tremendous drive that. guessing the conditions correctly, but who's going to be second? It is going to be Jason Wolf, just ahead of Breukers, just ahead of Files as they come over the line. So second is Wolf, Breukers third, Files fourth, Max Hofer is fifth, sixth goes the way of Mike Halder, seventh Alex Morgan, eighth Luca Enschler, ninth at the end was 18, which is Sheldon van der Linde, who on the original grid was on the penultimate row, and 10th, despite clattering the barrier, 82, Thomas Kramwinkel. Whew. When we had racing, it was good racing, wasn't it? But far too many incidents, I'm afraid, for the race director's point of view and his comfort. What else did we have on the last lap? This was Thomas Kramwinkel, who was shoulder charged, by Josh Files, wasn't it not? And Kerr Runch, into the wall goes Kramwinkel, who in the end got through in 10th place. Now, with the uncooperative Eberle getting in the way of Breukers, this was how Jason Wolf got up the inside of him. Up the curb, turned him sideways. Josh Files went for a gap, but that wasn't there either, so that just brought him even closer to the back of the two ahead of him. That might be one that's looked at after the race as well. But in the end, Niels Langeveld wins his second victory of the season, coming on the bounce of a rather controversial one at Ossersleben. Well, he didn't do anything wrong in that. It's nothing questionable. He got the weather conditions right, stayed on the right tyres, and even on that wet road, he was able to master the restarts. Had Pascal Eberle not been there getting in the way of everybody else on the lead lap, it might have been a different situation. But ultimately, Niels Langeveld comes through to score the win. A second victory for the Audi driver, breaking the Honda and Volkswagen monopoly on the season. Niels Langeveld with these two victories, and a happy man he is too. But I think there'll be a lot of rather frustrated teams looking at the damage bills and the work they've got to do overnight, and the ADAC officials, I think, will also be a bit frustrated that it was a race so badly affected by incidents and driving standards. So Volker Ehrkerker, the race director, I suspect will give them all a stiff talking to before tomorrow's race that we'll look forward to. Those that aren't required for Parc Fermé marshalled off into the paddock. Those for the podium continue around to the pit lane. Race 2 is tomorrow at 12 o'clock local time, at noon here at Zandvoort. And it'll be the same grid as today, but with a reversal of the top 10. So that would put Niels Langeveld for the front row, I think I'm right in saying. Yes, he'll be second on the grid, and Pascal Eberle, who started alongside him for that race but ended up a lap down, he will be on pole position on the reversal. So Eberle for pole and Langeveld, and some busy teams. But what a frustration that the race had so many interruptions. The first one, I suppose, inevitable if there's a driver needing attention. But had that not caused a lengthy stoppage, the race may well have finished even before the rain came. But when we did have the rain, yet more of a delay while people still changed tyres, and then the track surface affecting the way that different people were driving, and more incidents coming on the back of that. So the podium party, I think, are just about ready. The trophies are there, the presenters are there, and the drivers shortly will be called forward, assuming they've even left Parc Fermé. It might well be that Niels Langeveld is still being congratulated by the team. But Langeveld, Wolf and Breukers, the top three that we will need. Rick Breukers, fascinating to see how he adapts in different cars, because he's somebody that's had great success in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, winning the Middle East Championship this year. He's been one of the front runners in the European Super Trofeo, but also drove an LMP2 car at Le Mans and acquitted himself, as you would expect, very, very well. And here he is on a front-wheel drive touring car, something, again, completely different, but doesn't seem to faze Breukers because he just gets in and drives well. So in a few moments' time, we will have the drivers now on a podium that I think is getting wetter again, being called forward. And then we can get the presentation underway and possibly have a quick look at how the championship is going to look after that as well. 30 minutes time slot, and can you believe in that, only one full racing lap. One of the downsides to a place like Zandvoort is limited runoff, and gravel beds. People bemoan the fact, as you look at the result, that you have circuits with all the modern-day Formula One runoff areas, but at least that, for all the dramas about track limits, keeps a race going. But here, car goes off, either gets ensnared by the gravel or hits the barrier and stays on the grass verge. The race needs to be interrupted. Niels Langeveld from Jason Wolf and Rick Breukers, the top three. Josh Files finishing in 4th spot at the end of a much interrupted but very lively affair, confirming Antti Burri then down in 12th ahead of Gassara Rades. Steve Kirsch with damage dropping down to 14th. But in that, I think just finishing was quite an achievement in the end. And the pole sitter, Harry Procik, ending up down in 17th spot. But for a number of the teams, as I say, there will be work to do for tomorrow. Sandro Kaibach getting himself after his pit stop for slicks to 22nd. Of course, the conditions going against him a little bit towards the end of the race. And a number of drivers, as you can see, either not finishing or not even starting, in the case of quite a few for that original start. We lost 1 or 2 off that earlier grid, such as Jordan Rodriguez and a very disconsolate Jaap van Lagen. So, there's more tomorrow for the survivors. Moritz Österreich dealt a bad blow in the championship as one of the many in strife in that race. And there, on a now wet Zandvoort circuit and a wet Zandvoort podium, the top 3 drivers are set to be called forward, with Niels Langeveld taking a 2nd win of the season in the ADAC TCR Germany. For Franz Enschler's team, the American driver, Jason Wolf, steps forward, and Dutch 1st and 3rd, Rick Breukers, walks to the podium for 3rd place, and Niels Langeveld, the Dutch race winner, on the top step of the podium. The winning rookie is there as well in Luca Enschler, as the national anthem is to be played. So for Niels Langeveld then, the national anthem played for the winning driver, the winning team is Racing 1, and now the trophies are handed over, and it is Niels Langeveld for the Audi brand on the top step of the podium, celebrating his race victory. Very well deserved indeed. Then for 2nd place, Jason Wolf, following the steps of Kevin Gleeson, coming across to race touring cars in Europe. And then for 3rd place, Rick Breukers, Eric Vyers, the CEO of the Zandvoort circuit, hands over the trophy to home talent. Rick Breukers' father, himself no mean racer, Ivo Breukers, ready to cheer him on. And now the trophy to the winning team, to Racing 1, is presented. And there is the top rookie, also on the podium, Luca Enschler. So, for Niels Langeveld, a very, very popular win. Luca Enschler takes that winning rookie trophy. He's made a habit of that this year. And the Enschler team, the Volkswagen Motorsport squad, and a proud dad look on as well. Conscious, though, that as a team, one of its number with a damaged car for Florian Thoma after that incident earlier on, causing, of course, the initial safety car period and then the red flag. So the drivers then all get together for the photographs on the podium. The champagne can spray here at Zandvoort at the end of a lively, if in some ways frustrating, ADAC TCR Germany encounter. So we look forward to more racing tomorrow, in every sense, in TCR Germany. And the drivers then will, in a few moments, make their way off the podium And this is how we look in the championship now, with a 104-point lead for Josh Files over Mike Halder. Is he getting closer already to a second in a row title? Niels Langevelt's up to third, though, so an excellent job done by him. Fourth, Moritz Österreich dropping down. Sheldon van der Linde fifth. Florian Thomas not scoring. He's sixth, ahead of Tim Zimmerman in seventh spot. Luca Angschler rounding out the top 10 overall, as, of course, the best of the rookies. But Niels Langeveld making great strides up the order thanks to that win. And race 2 tomorrow should be another very lively affair indeed. Let's hope that it's good racing and not just full of incidents like it was today. The weather forecast for tomorrow isn't looking too flash either, so it might be that the weather conditions have a part to play in proceedings tomorrow here at Zandvoort as well. But for now, it is a win for Niels Langeveld to celebrate at the end of the first ADAC TCR Germany race of the weekend. Let's look at the highlights. We'll see you tomorrow for race 2, 12 o'clock local time. For now, from David Addison. Bye.
Sekunden Rückstand noch versucht hat zu